Greetings, welcome to Modal Matters. We are back in Sanol, the Sydney Cycle Association open ride. Putting in some good lines with the first one. Nice and deep, nice and wet. Track shaping up beautiful. So watch, share, enjoy. Though we did have a ton of fun riding, it kind of turned out to be a sad event because 5 days ago we lost one of the greats to the off-road dirt bike community. John Penton died at 100 years old. And you may not know the name John Penton, but you know his work and his legacy. KTM dirt bikes exist because John Penton. He was from Amherst, Ohio, and loved off-road, enduro type race, tight woods, and he'd go up to Michigan to the Jack Piner Gypsies enduro. And back then everyone was riding big old heavy Harleys, and he was riding, I think, BSAs and Vincents, and everyone thought bigger engine, pulled through the sand better. He went the opposite way. He wanted small, light, nimble bikes, fast. He thought these two-stroke engines were the way to go. So one year when he was over in Europe, riding an ISDT, he swung by a factory for a scooter company and asked them if they would make a lightweight dirt bike for him. So Drunkenholtz, the T of KTM, agreed to do it. So they made a deal, and in Europe, they would be called KTMs, K and T for the two guys that own the company, M for the name of the town they're located in. But then they shipped them across the ocean to America. It would be called a Penton. This deal was made on a handshake, and so KTM dirt bikes came into existence. They didn't deal with lawyers, so after the K and T died, the lawyers got involved, and that handshake didn't mean anything. So Penton ceased to exist. John was pushed out the deal, and KTM kept all the money for themselves. But before that happened, he was over visiting the factory one year to talk about the bikes, and he wanted to start making some good gear, some boots. They were all wearing lineman boots at the time, and he wanted something with more protection and then lace up near his eye. So he got directions to a cobbler up on the hill who made leather boots. He got lost on the way, ended up at the wrong place. Ended up, on the alpine prairies, where a alpine star flower was very predominant. A little shop they named after that flower. So he made a deal with that guy, and again just on a handshake. So thus the company Alpine Star came into existence, but it was originally called High Point. So High Point boots are now Alpine Stars. High Point gloves, leather gloves. Alpine Star exists in the motorcycle world because John Penton went over and made a handshake with a boot maker. He'd had several other deals like that, several other aftermarket parts to improve motocross. One of his last ones was a fiberglass trailer, again, High Point trailers. a great man, never really got too upset about being shut out on these deals because he was more concerned about motorcycles and improving the sport. A wonderful guy and a great asset to the sport who will be missed. But even though we're kind of in mourning at the loss of one of the greats, whose gear I'm wearing right now in the video, we still had a good day, and my Alpine Star boots did their job. They worked well. So thank you to the Penton family, and lots of love and honor and respect for your father and all he did for us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And like, share, subscribe as we get back to it next weekend.